financial literacy, and the human condition. Welcome to Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Rahaim.
We resolved many things, but what we didn't resolve was that the wife had the George Foreman grill that husband's grandma had given the couple for their wedding.
Oh my gosh.
And they couldn't resolve it.
Hi, it's Francis. I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for watching this video. If you're catching us on YouTube, please help us help others by clicking like, subscribe, and all notifications so you don't miss any videos. And check back for the next video. I think you're going to love it. Thanks again. For more information, you can visit us at hugyourmoney.com.
Welcome to Financial Fitness. I'm Jay Dean, along with the Money Doctor, Francis Rahaim. We have a guest today.
We have an attorney guest today,
Yeah.
Christopher Anderson. I won't call you Attorney Anderson. We're going to talk about that for a minute. But he is an attorney, of course, and a family law attorney. So we're talking about something that could bring even the calmest people to their knees, probably. Divorce and money. And if that doesn't sound like it's going to be fun, hang in there, because I promise you, our pre-show chat that we did was so engaging that we asked him to come on for a special edition. So we're going to talk about how the financial side can be made fairer, more human, and less painful. So our guest, Christopher Anderson, will help us do that. He's a family law attorney and a former prosecutor who's not afraid to talk about the realities behind the numbers. So welcome to the show.
And the numbers behind the realities, you bet. I'm really pleased to be here. Thanks for having me. And you're right. Like it's a combination. Divorce brings it all together, right? You get to talk about money. You get to talk about family. You get to talk about religion. You get to talk about all the things that are the most difficult. But it is really important to have frank discussions about.
For sure. And the emotional side of it will run most of our conversation, I'm sure, because that's what people deal with. But as the financial nerd that I am, we're also going to talk about forms, formulas, that so-called math for law. We'll talk about a little bit about math for law and how it might oversimplify real life numbers, right? And the difference between, what equal and equitable mean and all the things that you would need to know, or you would want someone you cared for who was going through what I call the unmarrying process to know. And from the perspective from Christopher Anderson at Anderson Dodson and New Leaf, that is very human. And the idea here is that we're going to try to help you find a way, if you can do it amicably, to unmarry in a less stressful, more equitable, fairer way, even just through this one episode.
Yeah, and it all starts with having those frank conversations, right? You have to know and be willing to understand the financial situation and the rest of the situation in order to unmarry, to have it be amicable. You can't avoid it, right? If you're hiding your head in the sand is one way to make sure that you can't resolve it amicably.
I would like to start with something a little lighter before we get heavy with this.
Sure.
And I am going to take a subject that we talked about off the air about titles. So if talking with an attorney seems a little daunting to you, or you think that this show might not be for you, let me just introduce you to Christopher Anderson. And so you and I talked about why people call attorneys Attorney Anderson. And you said to me, it's not actually a formal honorific.
Things I've heard that one quite frequently. When I was a prosecutor, people would call us ADA Anderson or Assistant DA Anderson or whatever. But there is no official honorific for an attorney. And most attorneys in most states in the United States are actually their degree is a Juris Doctor. And nobody calls us doctor. So the honorifics, I think, just come from a place where when people deal with professionals, they're used to that, right? We do call our physicians doctor. And to a large degree, a lawyer is handling, at a similar professional level, the intricacies of your life in a very meaningful way. And people want, I think it's more for the people who use the honorific than for the person having it added to their name, right? It's just this like need to believe or to desire to believe that this person has some super special knowledge. We call our spiritual advisors by honorifics, father or rabbi or whatever, depending on what sect it is. There's so many different ones, reverend, whatever it is. But so we do this with people to whom we're entrusting discretionary, professional, meaningful decisions to be made for us or with us. And I think that's where it kind of arises.
Yeah, I agree. Of course, people call me doctor, right? I don't ask for that. It's happened to me because of the PhD. But the funny part about that is I'm constantly having to say, I can't cure your rash. Don't tell me your medical problems. But I feel like there should be a distinction between maybe scholars and physicians or something like that, so that we separate
Yeah.
PhDs like myself who have no medical training from MDs or other designations that are doctors. But there are lots of names that we give to attorneys that may or may not be right. Like I can think of counselor and esquire that probably you get called in court, right?
Yeah, actually, I don't want to like insult people out there, but the only people I've ever seen using Esquire are people who are like
Yeah.
needing to like needing that for some reason. Counselor, I love, by the
Yeah.
way. I think counselor is and usually like you won't hear counselor generally except from other lawyers or the judges.
Hmm.
And I think it's a great place to start the show because I think as a profession and from people who deal with us, particularly in family law, we forget about that part of it. We call those attorneys at law, or Christopher Anderson, attorney at law, and like you said, Attorney Anderson. But it's the counselor at law that is so important as a role in family law and so often forgotten that you're dealing with a human being and that most of the advice, most of the counsel you will give clients in this role isn't legal.
That's right.
People come to family lawyers, all lawyers, honestly, but family lawyers in particular, with personal problems, not legal problems.
Yeah.
The final resolution is often done in the law, and the solutions need to be done with knowledge of the law. Because you don't want to advise a client to do something that's not going to hold up in court. That's going to be, that the courts are going to reject. It's going to be a waste of everybody's time. But other than that, like a lot of it's just personal.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think counselor is a very a perfect word for this because a lot of times I mean, let's just face it, when people come to us, you and I both deal with people in transition and with lots of emotional situations. Money can be the most emotional part of it in some cases, right? And that sort of counseling, that level of experience of helping them sort out what essentially can be a hot mess, right? To just sort it out and listen to people and say, what is it that's important to you? What are you trying to accomplish? How can I help you do that? That's
Boom.
not, yeah,
Yeah, that's it. And in
yeah,
fact, one of the things that I established as a driving factor of New Leaf Family, everybody that works here knows exactly that we will not begin an engagement with a client until we are certain, and more importantly, the client is clear as to what they're trying to accomplish. Like the words that you just used are the words. If we don't know what you're trying to accomplish, people come to us, like you said, a hot mess. Like my spouse has just left me. My spouse has just sued for divorce. Or I just found out something that makes me want to sue for divorce and da 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 da. And they're usually either dealing with something in the past that they're running away from, they want to get away from, or some conflict right now in the present, but haven't financially, emotionally, child raisingly, all the things haven't really given much thought to. All right, what does this look like 2 years from now? what do I want it to look like 2 years from now? And using that as their guiding force, what we call their Polaris, in driving the entire engagement.
Yeah, I can't agree with you enough on this. But I wonder, in our world, people are often intimidated about talking about their money in general. When you add something like a marital problem to that, it compounds everything. They end up in front of an attorney because they have to. As you said, somebody files for divorce. The other person says, boy, I'd better get an attorney. And there you are, right? But why do you think people are so intimidated by lawyers in the first place? It's why I started off with the why do we call them attorneys, right?
Yeah.
Why are they so intimidated by attorneys in the first place, do you think?
The same reason they're intimidated by accountants or financial advisors or other professionals, doctors, because they're entering into a field of knowledge
Mm.
that they don't have. So they're entering into the unknown. And I mean, it is the one of the core essences of our beings. Is we got this nice, beautiful brain, but all the way in the middle in there is the little lizard brain with the amygdala that teaches us and reminds us all the time that unknown equals danger.
That's
Unknown
right.
equals scary. Unknown equals bad.
Yep.
And so, we start there, right? And then attorneys exacerbate the problem by using big words and speaking in ways that make them sound important and make the client feel smaller. And the problem just circles and circles and circles, which is why we always start the conversation with, what do you want?
Mm.
Because everybody can talk about that, right?
Yes.
But we've got no special knowledge to help you decide what you want. Um, you know, the most special knowledge I've got on that is to just say why a few times.
Right.
Just getting down to that and then hearing it, and then it all becomes less scary. But I think it's a problem of perception, like you said, from the client's perspective, because it's probably the first time, hopefully, that they've hired a family lawyer. The first time going through a court system that is not easily understood,
Yeah.
and their first time, dealing with these kinds of problems, and so yeah, you start from a scary spot, but we all can talk about what we want and where we want our lives to be.
It's funny that you mentioned the way our brain keeps us alive because it's a story I've told on the air before, but you remind me of it that when people really need, say, financial wellness, or they really need, a counselor to help them unmarry or get divorced, it is very scary because your brain has been telling you, don't change. What you're doing has kept you alive so far, don't change. And
Right.
so when people find it very difficult to change or very difficult to step over a line, I remind them of that and say, this is what your brain is telling you. Don't leave the cave. The cave is safe, right? But you're
That's
going to
exactly right.
starve to death in the cave eventually. You need to learn how to live outside the cave. And so people will do that. And I think both of our professions, and it's one of my pet peeves, Jay will tell you, it's one of my pet peeves that financial advisors and attorneys both love to talk to you in jargon, in lingo, make themselves sound very knowledgeable. And to me, that means they're pretty insecure in their knowledge and
Hmm.
insecure in their own skin. If they have to dazzle you with jargon, rather than explain things to you in a way that you can understand and ask questions and feel comfortable about your own future in either case, then I think you look for another advisor or another counselor of some sort. And I don't like that sometimes attorneys and other professions hide behind the language, even in something like divorce, where people especially need clarity. So I just wanted to say I love the name of the firm, New Leaf, because it says something. It doesn't say, you win, divorce court.
Right, right.
It says, New Leaf, family. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know who came up with the name, but you did, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yay.
that. I didn't know that, but I love it. I love
My
to name
wife and I
things.
did together, but yes.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do to name things, and I don't think you could have done that any better. Three simple words that actually mean something. Bravo. Yeah,
Thanks. I appreciate it. And it does. It means a lot to us, right?
yeah.
There's a reason why it, but it goes back to that same question, right? And like, I hate to keep harping on it, but like, it always starts there. It's like, where do you want to be,
Mm.
right? you're turning over a new leaf, whatever, you're here because something's not working. Now, do some of our clients reconcile? Sure. And we're thrilled. We're thrilled when they do because that's the future they want,
Right.
not because of what we were just talking about, because they're going back to a place of known and perceived safety that is not
Yeah.
it's just perceived
Yeah.
safety. It's not actually safe. And by safe, I don't mean like they may be in danger. Sometimes they are, right? Sometimes they're in an abusive situation and
Sometimes.
they will go back to it. But
Right.
sometimes it's just they're not being fulfilled. They're in a situation where they are staying in a relationship because of the perceived safety rather than their full potential. And that's what New Leaf is all about. It's really just being able to enter into that full potential. The idea of not just turning over the new leaf as a book, but growing as a new leaf, as a new plant that can reach where it's trying to go, where it needs to go to really be its full bloom.
All
I,
right, we're at
I
a point. Let's take a break if we can. Francis, I'm sure people have questions. First of all, let's get your phone number for them.
Of course, they can reach us at 413-773-3333.
Or as always, just go to hugyourmoney.com. And we'll be back with more of Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Ram.
Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor is underwritten by Franklin County Technical School. We build futures. Visit fcts.us or call 413-863-9561.
Welcome back to Financial Fitness. I'm Jay Dean, along with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Ram, and a very interesting guest today. Christopher, this is great.
Well, thank you. It's so far been a very, I think an important conversation, enjoyable, but important conversation.
You know, what you had said in the other segment was that you want to obviously have a client know what they want. It's just so funny. In one particular book that I narrated, and I can't remember which one was the conflicting thing, but the author said many times people either don't know what they want or, yeah, for you to help somebody, obviously they've got to tell you what they want to have, what they want accomplished.
It's Jay, it's remarkable that, again, like what I was talking about earlier, is that, the clients come to us, potential clients come to us running away from something or embroiled in conflict. And in their ears already, almost always, are friends, family, work colleagues, etc., all with their own, mission, with their own perceptions, with their own desires and hopes and fears that they're all plugging into our potential client's brain. And, without ever, by the way, being honest about what's driving the advice that they're giving, because they've all got their own issues going on, but nobody is asking the question. And so, like, when I say, we call it at New Leaf Family, we call this the Polaris process. Like, it's something we must do before we will really get into an engagement. And because the client it's not like the client doesn't know, it's that they haven't had time or space to think about what that future is. So, and it's like I said, it's not magic and it's not big fluffy words, but it's asking clients things like, so this, a year from when we're finished, so 2 years from now, where are you living if everything works the way you want it?
Mm.
And not just like what town, but tell me about your house. What does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it feel emotionally like to live there? Who lives there with you? Where do your children live? Where do they go to school? What's your children's relationship like with your now former spouse? What's your children's relationship like with you? What's the children's relationship like with your parents, with his, blah, blah, blah. Like these are the questions. Where do you go to vacation? Where do the kids go to school? How do they get there? Like just the mundanity of life. Because that's what they haven't thought about. And what's really cool And this is kind of like bringing coaching into the legal practice. What's really cool about it is when you have that conversation and you help them to paint a picture of this future house, paint a picture of the relationship with the kids, paint a picture of where they go to school, where you're going on vacation. It creates a reality that they can now really work towards. And a reality that now, when they say, I want you to file this, and I want to do this discovery, and I want to do this stuff and that stuff. And you can then point to that future that they painted and say, do you understand that that might damage this picture? We might have to repaint this picture because of the decisions that you're making or want to make. And so let's talk about it in the context of that future. What a different conversation than, no, that's not a good idea. Why? Because I'm the lawyer and I know.
Right.
Right? Very, very different conversation.
That's fascinating. I was grinning away while you were saying that because, of course, that's what we do here in terms of saying to people, and I was going to bring this up when we came back from break. They often just haven't identified what they want. They haven't given it a name.
Yeah.
So when I start saying, well, what's important to you? What do you want? They want to tell me numbers. Well, I want to be wealthy. I want to retire in 2 years. I want to do that's the outcome you want. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How are we going to get there? What are you willing to do to get there? What aren't you willing to do to get there? Are your goals realistic? And if not, can we redefine them? Do you have a cat or not who is going to bother you in the middle of a show? Would you excuse me? Well, Lola, are you just going to join us?
Oh, Lola.
If she will stay off camera, we can just continue, I guess. But do you see her little ears popping up?
I did see an ear, yes.
Yeah. Yes. Do
She's
you
a
have a
Bengal,
cat
right?
named Lola? Yeah, she's a Bengal. That's the point is, people will say, well, they'll fight over the pets.
Oh, yeah.
Never mind the kids, a lot over the pets, right? They'll argue over anything. And the idea of having a firm work with you that does not perpetuate the argument because of legal fees, that instead is interested in resolving this in a way that is amicable and as fair as possible, given the participation of both people in the mix there, I think is incredibly valuable. I mean, in this conversation, it's really about doing something that's very, very difficult in a probably becoming more popular, but in a bit of an unusual way. When you think of divorce, you think of war. You don't think of, well, let's sit down and see what my future is going to look like.
Right.
But
and
that's the important
either side.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And even like there's even some movements out there. One's called the collaborative law movement, and there are others to try to do things more amicably. But to a large extent, they all suffer from the exact same problem: the lack of this envisioning of the future of each party for themselves,
Yes.
so that they can then know what they're working towards. Because otherwise, if you don't think about the future, it's gonna turn into a zero-sum game about fighting over the past.
Yes.
That's what the fight over the pets are. That's what the fights over the kids are. It's this reality that's gone, but that we're still holding on to and trying to carve up, as opposed to this future reality that is in abundance and doesn't need carved up because each person can have their own entire future. That doesn't need to take anything away from anybody else. And then when you can come at it from that perspective, it becomes easier.
Christopher, I was going to ask, as you're in that setup to try to ask these questions of a client, does it many times confound the client? I mean,
Absolutely.
does it slow the process up because they go, I don't know.
Absolutely. And that's the point. Right. And like that if they could kind of like what Francis was saying, if they come in and go like, I would like to have a $500,000 house in Buena del Vista, Florida, whatever. Like that's not real, right? It may be rehearsed or somebody else's idea of it, or once in a while they have done the work and they really have thought about it. But then you can tell because they look beyond you and they're seeing it. Then you know. But yes, it does confound them because nobody's asked them, and it confounds them when we do because it's not That's not the conversation they're expecting from their lawyer. And so, which is good. It's a little bit of a pattern interrupt, which we need in order to begin to have the meaningful conversations rather than, and then, he took my mom's gray rug that, like, or whatever. I'd tell a story. I did a hearing once when I was a pretty young attorney, but I'd already started having these thoughts about what it should be. And I was doing a hearing. I was doing a divorce, and we resolved many things. But what we didn't resolve was that the wife had the George Foreman grill that husband's grandma, had given the couple for their wedding.
Oh my gosh.
And they couldn't resolve it.
Yep.
And they wouldn't agree about it. And they were going to go to a hearing about it. We're in the courtroom.
Oh my goodness.
And I take out my checkbook and I say, how much is a George Foreman grill?
Yeah.
I will write a check to the person who gives up the George Foreman grill out of my own money. I will not bill either of you for this, for the George Foreman grill, to avoid me appearing in front of a judge to talk about a George Foreman grill.
Yeah.
They wouldn't do it.
They wouldn't do it, I bet.
Wouldn't
Exactly.
do it. We had the hearing.
Yep. And did the judge scold them and send them out into the hall, or what happened in the end? Do you remember?
The judge just heard it, awarded the George Foreman grill, and then pulled me aside because
Don't ever come in here
the
again with
court
that.
no. The court officer told him about the check and everything. Like
Oh,
the
good.
judge knew what had gone on. And it was just like, and he just was like, you can lead him to water. The judge got it, but the judge could have sent them out in the hall. Probably should have sent them out in the hall, and to resolve it. But you talked about pets, like people, will get over. Oh, and it's not about their love for the animal. It never is.
Yeah.
It's about their wanting to either take it away from the other person,
Yeah.
or about holding on to, again, carving up the past.
It's absolutely true. And I'll just to make a comment about what we were speaking to a minute ago, I think many or even most people have not asked themselves what they want when they get through this. They're in a tailspin. Either they're the one filing or the one, receiving that filing, and their life is changing drastically. And it may involve kids, and it may involve pets, and it may involve property, but it always involves money. And people, you're trying to take one household usually that two incomes are supporting, and you're trying to split it into two households, and nobody wants to make any compromises. And you have the same income. I'm sorry, folks, something's got to give somewhere. And so I do want to get into what's the difference between equal and equitable. But first, I just want to ask you, I think what you're saying is the same thing I find, which is when people are arguing about the money in the divorce, and I don't think there's any way to separate that. Almost everybody argues about the money, and it's a majorly emotional problem more than the math. They're using it as a stand-in for something else. Fairness, validation, control. It isn't about the pet. It isn't about the George Foreman grill, and it isn't about the money, even though we all think that it is. Do you agree with that?
100%. 100%. It's either holding on to the past or being embroiled in the current conflict, and a failure to have that thought experiment about the future. Because if you can just get away from it for a second, you can just say, hey, just take a break, take a sec, look around you. There are people who are not married who live in their own house.
That's right.
With their kids.
Yep.
And they're not on the street. Like, never. There are people who never got married and they're doing it. It's not like what you just said, Francis, is totally true. Like two can live cheaper than one, or when than two people separately, for sure. It is a different lifestyle. And there are things that are different, and there's also the opportunity to enhance what you bring in. And like people, again, if you haven't thought about the future, all these things are unknowns. And what are unknowns? Unknowns are
Scary.
And so, it's clinging to a past and also dealing with So it's clinging to a past and dealing with perceived slights and looking for some, you said equity, fairness, justice, in all of it. As opposed to, sitting down and saying, you know what? That life is over. It's over. I may still be in the house, but I'm a tenant now.
Yeah.
I'm a private pilot. And one of the things they teach early on when I was learning is if something happens while you're in the air and your plane is now disabled in some way, you're flying the insurance company's airplane, right? Your job now is to get you and these passengers down alive, and you're not worried about like this beautiful airplane that you own is gone. It is gone. Like just that's no longer a thing. Now you're dealing with your future and these people's future. And that's how you have to think about the divorce too. It's like that old life is over. You may still be in the illusion of it,
Yeah.
but it's over. So it's time to start getting you landed in a place where you're safe and able to continue.
And we're sure we have some questions. Frances, can we first get your phone number?
Absolutely. It's 413-773-3333.
And are we going to fill folks in too about how to connect with Christopher at New Leaf?
Newleaf.family. And you get like no .com or anything else, just www.newleaf.family.
Oh.
And we're going to do /money doctor. So if you want to find particular things that are pertinent to this conversation, you just go to www.newleaf.family/money doctor, and you can contact us there.
And join us next time around for another edition of Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Frances Ram.
Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor is underwritten by Hug Your Money.
Mission granted, chase your dream.
Hug Your Money, where financial wellness gets personal. Will you help us spread the word about financial fitness? Please like, subscribe, and choose all. Thank you.